welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Well, folks, we are at the big one, folks, and and the reason why I say the big one because I came to realize I came to realize after I was recounting some of my after I did a head count on some of my old episodes, including some of my previous episodes, because in my previous episode of Codo Cinema, which was my review of the live action remake of Snow White, I mentioned that we hit episode 198. However, I came to realize that I came to realize that the episode that I recorded was actually episode 199. So, what that means in this recording that I'm doing, this is episode 200 that I'm doing. Now, I don't know what came to me. I don't know what came to my realization that I was going. I don't know what came to the realization that I hit 200. Well, let's just say I've been very busy with a lot of things lately. Like I've been busy with my job with my work lately. I mean, it's been a lot. I mean, it's been a lot. I've been working as a paraprofessional at my high school. Plus, I also been working. I also wrapped up. Plus, I also wrapped up the kids theater production of Little Mermaid. Let's just say I've been running around everywhere, and it's a lot that can take out of me. But at the end of the day, it's all good. It's all good at the end of the day. But prior to recording, I thought my Snow White review the live action Snow White review was episode 198. No, it was actually 199. This episode that I'm going to record will actually be my 200th episode. And ladies and gentlemen, Codo Cinema just broke another milestone. We just hit 200 episodes. I cannot believe it. And I don't know why I miscounted like this. I don't know why I miscalculated the episode numbers that I did. I don't know why, but you gotta admit, I've been doing this show for quite a while also working at my jobs. I mean, as a paraprofessional at my high school, which is Naperville Central High School. Of course, Center Stage Theater as a theater technician, and Naperville Community Television. I mean, it's a lot of work, and I love the jobs I have. Plus, I know the hard work pays off, even if it does take a lot out of you. Like, I completely forgot that I completely forgot to keep track of my episode numbers. So yes, we have finally reached 200 episodes. And I just want to thank everybody who has continuing to listen to Kodo Cinema, and also and also I just want to thank everybody who's continuing on with this journey. And of course, to all the listeners out there, thank you for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot to me right there, folks. And this is basically goes out to everybody in the United States and everybody else out throughout the world. So thank you to the whole world for supporting and listening to Kodo Cinema. So now we are at episode 200 of Kodo Cinema. Alright, so anyway, you're all probably wondering what movie I'm going to talk about for episode 199. Well, I decided to go back to the short film category, and this will be another Wallace and Gromit short. And this Wallace and Gromit film that I'm going to talk about is the film that started it all for the Wallace and Gromit franchise, and that will be Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out. Yep, you heard that right, folks. I'm going to talk about the first Wallace and Gromit film titled Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out. Now, Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out is a 1989 British stop-motion animated short film and the first installment in the Wallace and Gromit series. It was directed, animated, and co-written by Nick Park at the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield and Aardman Animations in Bristol. So Nick Park directed, written, and of course, of course, did the animation and cinematography, while Steve Rushton co-wrote the screenplay with Rob Copeland producing. And the film stars Peter Sallis as Wallace. Now, of course, some of you probably may be listening. It doesn't sound much, but to me, there's a lot more to it because A Grand Day Out, as I mentioned, is the first installment in the Wallace and Gromit franchise. But it's the fact that Nick Park, who did this movie, was making this while he's in school at the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield. I mean, it's not every day that you hear like a student who makes a film project for school would end up would end up being a full-length short film, for people to watch. In fact, it got nominated for at the 63rd Academy Awards. So Nick Park ended up getting nominated for the Academy Award. Although that film didn't win, but his other short film that he did, called Creature Comforts, would win in that same category. So Nick Park was nominated for both Creature Comforts and Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out, but he did not win for Wallace and Gromit. He won for his other short film, Creature Comforts. So his film got the recognition it deserves, but he still went out with a win for his other short film. So that's amazing right there. Now, before I break down this movie, I want to give in. Some background. I want to give in some background in this movie. Plus, we're also going to do some trivia as well after the breakdown. So, Nick Park started creating A Grand Day Out in 1982, just as a graduation project for the National Film and Television School. And in 1985, Aardman Animations took him on before he finished the piece, allowing him to work on it part-time while still being funded by the school. Well, that's actually pretty cool. So he was working on this film part-time while also working with Aardman Animations. So that's pretty cool. And to make the film, Park wrote to William Harbutt's company requesting 1 long ton, which is 1,000 kilograms of plasticine. And the plasticine is basically the clay that is being used for for the Wallace and Gromit short. So this 1 ton block of plasticine he received had different colors, one of which was called stone. This was used for Gromit. Park himself had wanted to voice Gromit, but he ultimately realized that the voice he had in mind, that of Peter Hawkins, would have been difficult to animate. I think that was a smart move because Gromit in the Wallace and Gromit franchise does not talk. He's basically a mute. So basically he doesn't talk. And of course this is kind of like some of the other characters too. This reminds me of Dopey and Honest John's partner in crime. I forgot his name. I forgot Honest John's partner in the Pinocchio movie. Honest John's cat, right? This anthropomorphic cat in Pinocchio. He's mute. So both the cat in the Pinocchio movie that teams up with Honest John and Dopey from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they're both muted characters. They're both muted characters, so they don't talk. And I think going back with Gromit, I think Gromit not talking is a smart move because I think it would ruin the vibe or understanding of it probably would have ruined the character's vibe because Gromit does have facial emotions. So at the very least, you can understand. At the very least, when you see Gromit on screen, you can understand like the emotions that he is conveying while being muted. So I think that was a smart move that Nick Park didn't want Gromit to talk, right? So going back on topic, Park wrote to Peter Sallis asking him to voice Wallace, and Sallis agreed in return for a donation of 50 pounds to a charity of Sallis's choice. So one of the ideas Park wanted Wallace to do is for Wallace to have a Lancashire accent like his own, but Sallis could only do a Yorkshire accent. Inspired by how Sallis drew out the word cheese, Park chose to give Wallace large cheeks. When Park called Sallis 6 years later to explain he had completed his film, Sallis swore in surprise. And Gromit was named after grommets because Park's brother, who is an electrician, often mentioned them, and Park liked the sound of the word. Wallace was originally a postman named Jerry, but Park felt the name did not pair well with Gromit. And Park saw an overweight Labrador retriever named Wallace belonging to an old woman boarding a bus in Preston. And Park commented it was a funny name and a very northern name to give a dog. Now, according to the book, The World of Wallace and Gromit, Park originally planned the film to be 40 minutes long and to spoof Star Wars with numerous characters and a fast food restaurant on the moon. However, he shrank the story when he realized it would take him several more years to complete. And that's another thing too, because the short is 23 minutes long. So imagine how different that movie would have been if they added 20 more minutes to this short. Make it like adding a spoof to Star Wars with more characters, and of course a fast food restaurant on the moon. I mean, I don't know how that would have been, but it would have been interesting right there. But unfortunately, there were only two characters in this short, which is basically Wallace and Gromit, because in the Wallace and Gromit shorts, besides Wallace and Gromit, there are at least one or two side characters. But unfortunately, with the years later, I think they had enough money to add in more characters. So after each short, and of course they had a feature film, two feature films actually, which is Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and of course Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. There were more characters, and of course there was another short they did, which was Wallace and Gromit, A Matter of Life and Death, which that came out after the Curse of the Were-Rabbit movie. There were more characters later on, so basically this movie Grand Day Out was basically a starting point. So I guess Nick Park and Aardman Animations were on a tight budget, which probably explains why they didn't add in that many characters in the early shorts up until Curse of the Were-Rabbit. So anyway, the film's budget was £11,000. That's in UK dollars. So in US dollars, it would be $14,355.27. That's the budget in US dollars. So $14,355.27 would be the US budget for Wallace and Gromit. But we're talking about pounds, which is UK money, right? Because Wallace and Gromit was made in the UK. That budget over there was £11,000. Just to compare UK dollars to US dollars, right? So anyway, let's get to the breakdown, shall we? So Wallace is a middle-aged, old, good-natured, crazy and clumsy, though super ingenious and extremely Wensleydale and cheese-obsessed inventor, and he lives in England with his brave, loyal, and intelligent pet and trusty sidekick, best friend, and fellow inventor beagle dog named Gromit. And Wallace, as I mentioned, is voiced by Peter Sallis, and the two live in a red brick household on Western Wallaby Street. And this short opens up with the two sitting on a couch. This short opens up with the two sitting on two different chairs, and we get a nice little detail. We get a nice little detail of the house a little bit, especially some of the magazines that Wallace is reading, and I guess like the interior house itself. And the house itself, while it is very tight, but you can tell right away You could tell why right away that the way how it opens up is really good, but of course, we need to keep in mind that this was made in 1989. So, and Nick Park only had one ton of plasticine. So the way how it was made by hand. Keep in mind, there was no. It was not CGI. I don't think CGI was incorporated for that. I guess a little bit of visual effects was obviously used for the other shorts. But this time around, let's be honest. We need to keep in mind this is stop motion animation, right? So they had to use the camera, basically take a picture of it, cut off how many seconds of that, and boom. This is not easy, guys. Stop motion is not easy, and Nick Park knows his craft. He, at the very least, knows what he's doing with that style, right? Because in the later shorts, the designs for the characters and the world improved. And this is very early, and this is the first installment. Grand Day Out is the first installment, and I like the interior design, but I do like later on it improves, right? I love the improvements later on for each short, and of course, movies as well. So one evening, they are searching for holidays and travel guides for a bank holiday weekend out. They are indecisive, and Wallace goes to make some tea along with crackers and cheese, but suddenly realizes that there's no cheese to go on them at all, and that the house is clean out of them. Like he opens the fridge and notices that the fridge is empty. There's no cheese, and he's like, "No cheese, Gromit. Not a bit in the house." And it occurs while he's eating a cracker, and it occurs to Wallace while he's eating a cracker that he got the idea of like going somewhere where there could be cheese. He's like, "Cheese, Gromit. We'll go somewhere where there's cheese." So Wallace looks through the magazine of like different locations and name drops a couple of them. I think Wensleydale was mentioned, and then of course Philadelphia as well because Philadelphia cheese, right? And then the other location, the last location that came to mind on Wallace was the moon. Because there's like an old tale where the moon is made of cheese, right? Like you hear this a lot from kids saying, "Oh, the moon is made of cheese," right? I guess that's a tall tale, and Wallace looks out on the moon, looks at the moon, and it's the nighttime, by the way, in England, and Wallace is like, everybody knows that the moon is made of cheese. So so what he does, he and Gromit do next is they build a rocket. And of course, keep in mind they're inventors too, so they built a rocket. I mean, they're not only inventors, but I'm pretty sure good engineers as well. They're just building this rocket. They're building this rocket, and they're doing this in the basement. And there's also a group of rats down there too, also watching the construction as well. It's pretty hilarious. So anyway, Wallace is truly ballistic, and the two construct an orange homemade space rocket in their basement, and it's a very huge basement that is used for a laboratory and workspace. So once the rocket is built, everything's all set, and the rocket was about to blast off until Wallace realizes that he forgot the crackers. Like he tells Gromit, "No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers." And Gromit's reaction, his eyes were wide open. Realized like, he was like, "Dude, you forgot the crackers, and we're counting down." Like it was counting down. It was counting down, and the music was like dun 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 dun. This is also by the way, just to mention this too, Julian Knott is the composer for this short, A Grand Day Out, and he went on to do that for the other Wallace and Gromit shorts and the movies that came as well. Just to let you know. But the music was so funny. Like it was like dun 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 dun. It had a bit of a futuristic jazz feel to it, but it's funny because Wallace gets out of the rocket, goes back upstairs, grabs the crackers, gets back in the rocket, gets back inside the rocket, and it blasts off into space. And it's a crazy moment because it was counting down. There was like a minute left on the timer before it takes off, and I think it was at the half. It was probably half a minute later. Wallace forgets the crackers and goes back and gets it. That's crazy, right? But anyway, I mean, he would not have made it back, but you gotta expand your disbelief, right? You gotta expand your disbelief. This is like the Wallace and Gromit films have some of the most craziest moments you've seen on screen from the point of view of Wallace and Gromit, and where Wallace forgets the crackers during the countdown really is one of those crazy moments. And of course, the rocket blasts off with both Wallace and Gromit, and they fly perfectly to the moon in outer space in search of their favorite snack to have a picnic holiday on the moon and eat the moon once they test a sample but can't decide on it. So basically, Wallace and Gromit land on the moon, and Wallace picks a spot to eat that moon cheese, and he puts it on his cracker and tasted it and asked Gromit, "What do you think this tastes like, Gromit? Wensleydale?" Gromit nods his head no, and Wallace is like, "Oh, what about Stilton?" Gromit disagrees, but Wallace like eats it anyway, and he was like, "Well, I don't know, lad. Ain't that type of cheese I ever tasted. Let's try another spot, shall we?" So Wallace and Gromit go to another spot, but unfortunately, the two discover a coin-operated oven-like security alien space robot droid, and the name is never mentioned, but it's called the Moon Cooker Machine. And Wallace puts a coin in it, but nothing happens. So the two keep walking, but unfortunately, the robot activates and cleans up their picnic supplies. Among them is a holiday guide which the robot reads and fantasizes about a skiing holiday and wishes to return to Earth. So the robot discovers the rocket and writes up a parking ticket, which is actually pretty funny, and notes an oil leak. So Wallace and Gromit did not check the rocket for oil leaks, huh? So the robot tracks Wallace and Gromit to another picnic spot and nearly hits Wallace over the head with a blackjack. You know, the blackjack, which is I'm pretty sure is that little that little thing they use that I guess the cops use to knock out their enemies with, the little blackjack, right? And he was about to knock Wallace out, but unfortunately the money runs out and it freezes in place. Wallace takes the blackjack as a souvenir and places another coin inside the robot. So the two head back to the rocket, and the robot jolts to life again, realizing they can get to Earth with the rocket. It chases them and attempts to catch them as punishment for stealing Cheese Moon rock and trying to eat the moon. So at first, now when I saw this part, at first you see the robot waving his arms around. I was like, wait, take me with you, take me with you. Right? Like he wants to go back to Earth with them just so he can, have a skiing holiday. Hey, I guess he can. I guess the robot can be an Olympic skier, right? Skiing down the hill, right? I think that would have been nice, but this robot is basically their first antagonist in this short, and I wouldn't say he's an antagonist. I mean, he's just doing his job, right? This robot's just doing his job, making sure the moon is okay, right? But of course, he goes after Wallace and Gromit. Well, for starters, stealing Cheese Moon. Even Wallace is like, "Oh, we gotta take off, Gromit, take off, let's take off." But coming to realize later on, the robot is just basically like, he wants to go back to Earth with them just to have a skiing holiday, right? So Wallace and Gromit seal the rocket behind them, but they forgot to light the fuse. So the robot cuts at the fuselage with a can opener and breaks in and lights a match, which ignites the ignition and causes a huge blast, blowing the robot out with some debris and blowing the rocket into orbit. So anyway, the robot is upset because he's unable to go back to Earth now. But unfortunately, some of the debris that he got, he was able to turn them into skiing equipment. So he skis across the moon's surface on a skiing holiday. And as the rocket heads home to planet Earth, again, happily with the cheese, the robot waves to the rocket goodbye. Even Wallace and Gromit waved goodbye to the robot as well. And Wallace and Gromit set course back to West Wallaby Street. And that's it. That's how the short ends. Not bad for the debut of Nick Park and Aardman Animations in the Wallace and Gromit world, right? Not a bad start, right? That's actually pretty good. That's actually a pretty good start right there. I mean, they went back to West Wallaby Street, Wallace and Gromit. That's where they went back, and I'll be honest, it is really good, and it holds up very well. Now, the animation and designs for Wallace and Gromit improved in the years to come, right? So like later, because this is a school project that Nick Park was working on, and with that school project, it became a huge hit. Not just for him, but also Aardman Animations, because Aardman Animations was involved with this movie. Thus, the franchise was born. Plus, what's also interesting, now we're going in, and as I mentioned, it was nominated for the Academy Award, but it lost to Creature Comforts, another short that Nick Park did. So Nick Park got recognized for Wallace and Gromit, but he won the Oscar for Creature Comforts. So anyway, now we're gonna lead into a bit of trivia for you. So um, prior to Wallace and Gromit, this movie actually saved a cheese factory. I'm not making this up. Now, I mentioned this before in my other Wallace and Gromit short, Wallace and Gromit A Close Shave, where Wallace mentions Wensleydale. And according to this trivia right here, Nick Park made Wallace say Wensleydale because it made his face look nice and toothy. However, Nick Park was unaware that the factory where Wensleydale cheese is made was on its last legs and was about to declare bankruptcy. Happily, this film's success brought the factory back from the brink. So, meaning it was the line that Wallace said, Wensleydale. It was a throwaway. It was a throwaway line, and it caught the attention of many people, and a lot of people wanted to taste some of that Wensleydale cheese, right? So, which meant the cheese sales skyrocketed after this short came out. That's amazing right there, folks. That is amazing right there. And here's another trivia for you. Nick Park loosely based Wallace on his own father, Roger Wollston Park, who was an incurable tinkerer, inventor, and photographer. He once built from scratch a small trailer the family would take on trips to the beach. Park described it as a living room on wheels, complete with wallpapered interiors and wooden furniture bolted to the floor, much like the rocket ship in A Grand Day Out. Which is a nice little detail because when Wallace and Gromit were inside that rocket, it almost seems like that they built the interior of their living room, like as if the rocket was turned into a living room, right? And I thought that was pretty clever too, especially when Wallace was making toast, right? Like he had the toaster and he made toast while on the rocket, and it was like, cracking toast, Gromit. Which is another catchphrase that Wallace says in the franchise, right? Now, I've already mentioned the film. Now, of course, the film took over 6 years to make, and almost all of it single-handedly done by Nick Park himself, and it formed part of his graduation project for the National Film and Television School, hence the co-production credit. Now, here's another interesting trivia for you. Now, this is going back to Gromit, but Gromit was going to originally be a cat, but then changed to a dog because the latter would easier to animate. So that's pretty interesting. So Gromit was going to be a cat, but no, they changed him to a dog. So that's actually, I think the dog part stick. I think Gromit being a dog sticked better because I don't know about Gromit being a cat. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. to be quite honest. I mean, we already had Felix the Cat, Garfield, and we already had Felix the Cat, Garfield, and then what's his name? What's the other cat? I forgot the other cat's name. Heathcliff. There we go. There's Heathcliff, Garfield, and Felix. There we go. That took a while to guess, but whatever. But anyway, and then going back to Peter Hawkins, who was originally going to voice Gromit, he already recorded full lines of dialogue for the character, but unfortunately that was dropped. Even Nick Park, as I mentioned, he almost voiced Gromit, but that idea was dropped too in favor of Gromit not talking. So it became clear how expressive he could be through small movements of his eyes, ears, and brow. So none of his dialogue was used. And I'm referring back to Peter Hawkins. Like I said, making Gromit not talk in this movie was a smart move. Using his emotions, including small movements of his eyes, ears, and brow, was actually a smart move, in my opinion. So anyway, now of course, Nick Park's middle name is actually Walston, and and Walston is the name that is actually on the clock inside the spaceship that Wallace and Gromit built, and Nick Park put Walston on the clock. So that's pretty interesting right there. And of course, another thing too, the number plate on the spaceship reads Wall 155, which is basically Wallace for Wallace. That's pretty interesting right there. And Nick Park used school children at a primary school in Longton near Preston as one of his test audiences for the film. And this was because his niece attended the school at the time. The kids loved it. That's actually pretty cool. You know, having your test audiences be children for Wallace and Gromit, and the kids end up liking it. So that's actually pretty nice. That's actually pretty nice. It is also nice that Nick Park remembered his niece, right? He was thinking about his niece at the school that his niece attended, and he was like, "Huh, I'll show this film to the kids at my niece's school," right? Yeah, I think that was actually pretty nice that Nick Park actually did, and also the matches that Wallace used were duck matches. The matches that Wallace used were duck matches to light the fuse on the rocket, a reference to Swan matches. And that's pretty much it for the trivia for you. So anyway, I want to give him my thoughts on this short. I love this short. Now keep in mind, I love this short. Although to me, after I saw all four shorts, including the two feature films, I wanted to say this was the weaker Wallace and Gromit film, but it's not really. Because the more I think about this movie, the more I thought to myself that, yeah, it's a lot different because this came out in 1989, and Nick Park started to work on this as a school project back in 1982. So this started off as a school project, and I gotta keep that in mind. And this was obviously his first Wallace and Gromit movie, and I know the clay animation is a lot different in this movie compared to the other shorts and the feature films because of time and the technology that they had to improve to make it more clean, just to say. But this still holds up. I know Wallace's design changed a little bit in this short, but I gotta appreciate it because they were making this short in 1982 and it took them like 6 years to get it made, right? So there was a lot going on, and Nick Park had to use his hands to make those characters, and the world come to life, including with the help of his other crew members too. But it's still a good movie. It's still a good movie. I heard some people said that A Close Shave is the weaker Wallace and Gromit film because of the tone, because of the depressing tone of the short. Although I never came to realize that, to be quite honest, after watching a couple of videos of where Wallace and Gromit shorts and the films were being ranked, right? But to my knowledge, I thought this would be the weaker installment. I thought this would be the weaker movie. Plus, another reason to bring this up too is also the antagonistic robot. Although to me, he's not really an antagonist. I mean, he was only an antagonist for like a few seconds up until he starts thinking about, his skiing holiday, right? But but not really. I mean, I'm going to have to do a future episode where I had to rank all the Wallace and Gromit short films plus the movies and rank them through my own, basically through my own opinion. But A Grand Day Out, I would probably rank it a little higher, right? Maybe a little higher over A Close Shave, right? Because keep in mind, this was a product of its time, and it was the first installment. Plus, this film was a school project for Nick Park. Started off as a school project, but it became a huge hit. It saved a cheese factory, and it got nominated for an Academy Award. And I'll just leave it right there. And if I were to rank this one, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 because of how it was how it was executed. I enjoyed this short. I like the I like the story idea of basically Wallace and Gromit going to the moon for cheese, and it's a funny story. It's a funny story despite a couple of crazy moments, and like I said, expand your disbelief. The other crazy moment was when they were trying to get back to Earth, and the robot had to like get inside the rocket while the rocket is basically warming up and about to launch. Right? That's another crazy moment right there in this movie. So that's basically like two crazy moments right there. But still, I give it a 9. But I gave it a 9 out of 10 right there. But anyway, that is about it for this movie. I enjoyed Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out, and I believe everybody should watch this. I think this should be played in school, right? This should be a film. This film should be shown in schools, right? To anybody who is interested in not just stop motion animation, but doing film in general. Because to me, now I went to Eastern Illinois University and I studied TV and video production, but I also double majored in audio recording technology for music. And as of now, I am a part-time sports videographer with Naperville Community Television, and I've been filming a lot of high school sporting events, but also doing like while also interviewing high school athletes after each high school sporting event. So at the very least, I already got the overall general idea how to film, right? But of course, I think, like I said, this short should be played in film in schools, even film schools and colleges, giving people the idea of like what it's like to do stop motion animation, right? But also giving people the idea of like of how to film projects, right? This film should be played in schools. While I'm at it, one of these days, I'm on the I'm actually thinking about making a short film of my own. Like it's been like I know I'm doing sports. I know I'm filming high school sporting events, but down the line, I am thinking about making a film, a short film, just to start off. I don't know what film I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about to film and write, but who knows down the line? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ideas to make a short film, especially on my end. And of course, what Nick Park did with his short film, he at the very least had help from his school and Aardman Animations to, do Wallace and Gromit. So who knows down the line? I mean, I'm kind of thinking about it. Want to get into the spirit of making a short film. So who knows? We'll see down the line. But anyway, I know that's a little bit off topic, but hey, just want to share it. Anyway, that will be a wrap on this episode. So anyway, Wallace and Gromit: Grand Day Out. It is on Amazon. So I saw this short on Amazon. So if you guys have Amazon, go check it out. Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out plus the other shorts, they're all on Amazon. So go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It will be a Grand Day short film to watch. and it will be a good one. I promise you that. But anyway, that will be a wrap on this episode. So, what did you guys think of Wallace and Gromit: A Grand Day Out? Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? Did you think this movie was okay? I would love to hear your thoughts. So, ladies and gentlemen, that will mark the end of Codo Cinema episode 200. I mean, what else is there to say about this, folks? Like, we have hit the 200th episode of Codo Cinema. And I don't know how I miscounted the number of episodes that I've done. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I've been working a lot lately, and it really took a lot out of me. But hey, you know what? That's all fine. That's all fine and good. Because you know what? I'm just happy that I'm still able to continue this podcast. Like, it's been a wild ride. I've been doing this since 2019. And thinking back to when I did episode 100 before I graduated from Eastern Illinois University, it was a big surprise. It was a big surprise, a big miracle to hit that milestone back in 2022. Now, 3 years later, we have hit another milestone. We hit another 100 episodes, and this one was episode 200. So what better way to go out on? And you know what? I'd be up for another 100 episodes, folks. I'd be up for maybe 300 episodes. Let's see if Codo Cinema can break 300 episodes in the near future. That would be amazing. Shout out to all the listeners who are listening to this podcast. Big shout out to the US and the entire world for listening to my podcast. It's been a journey to remember, folks. I'm telling you right now, the future of this podcast, I got a feeling it'll be a good future. Let's hope. Let's bring on 300. Let's bring on another 100 episodes so we can hit 300 episodes in the future. But anyway, that will be a wrap on this episode. Thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.